Welcome to the Start Something Show. Join world-renowned experts, change agents, and everyday folks who have done the amazing. All here to help you start something incredible. Now it's time to step out, live your perfect day, and create a legacy with your host, Tina Dietz.
Wow. Just wow. We're coming up on 50 episodes of the Start Something Show. This is episode 49. Jeez, it's like almost a whole year of being able to bring to you just cool information, cool people, help to build your business and the life that you want. It's been an absolute privilege, my dears. I am so honored to have the position of being in your ear on a weekly basis, whether you have just found us or you've been listening to us for the entire year. Thank you. Thank you for being a listener on the show. And I'm just so tickled that we're going to be able to continue and even deepen our message and deepen our ability to get you what you need directly, personally. And what the hell am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about our new show, Creative Business Oasis, that is starting in March. And we're going to be hosting it live as an evening show, evening East Coast U.S. time. To get more information, you want to head over to creativebusinessoasis.com and just go ahead and sign up there, and we'll make sure that you have the information as the shows get scheduled, because we are lining up some really cool guests, and you are going to be able to interact with us live on the air. Send in your questions, send in your chat without having to subscribe to any email lists or anything like that. This is an online talk show format that we're going to be bringing to you on a weekly basis, and I'm just super excited to be able to see you face-to-face if you like, face-to-voice if you want, or even face-to-typing as the case may be, because the platform we're going to be using, which is called Blab, check it out at blab.im, is going to allow us to have a lot of flexibility to bring you a lot more live interaction and information from some very cool people from around the world. I've even had some requests from our audience to bring back guests that we've had over the last year. And I've got guests who are really excited to come back and share with you some more information, answer questions, and dig into what's really going to help you this year build your business, build your systems, build those elements all around you that you need, everything from time management to public speaking to how to do webinars, how to produce an audiobook, how to create your own podcast, all those good things that we're looking at when we're talking about building a business and the life that you love. So very excited to be bringing that to you in really just a few short weeks. So check it out at creativebusinessoasis.com. There's just a landing page there now, but let us know that you're interested, and that way we can stay in touch and make sure that we are covering the topics that are going to be most useful to you, and we're not guessing, right? We've got a pretty good pulse on our audience here, but we always want to know more. Well, speaking of knowing more and talking about hot topics, today on the show, I've brought on Sylvie McCracken, and I met Sylvie through a course we were taking together on course building. I call it the Course of Courses. And it was a great course that we took through a gentleman named David Garland. If you can check out his work at risetothetop.com. Great dude. He doesn't know I'm promoting him on the show today. It's just worth promoting. He produces really wonderful courses. But Sylvie, I came across her work, and she has a deep specialty in showing people how to create passive income with ebooks. Now, this isn't about creating kind of those scammy, pamphlet-y, Kindle books that were kind of all the rage a couple of years ago. Sylvie herself has produced a number of best-selling books, like real best-selling books that have generated her six-figure income. And she is not, by her own admission, an author. So she's going to be on the show today telling us about how to create effective, high-earning ebooks and how to really create passive income with them, not necessarily have them be an introduction to something else or have to push them out constantly to try to sell a copy or two here or there. This is the real deal on how to generate income with ebooks. So Now that I've said income with ebooks 4 or 5 times, why don't we actually get to the topic and talk with Sylvie? She is joining us all the way from halfway around the world. Oh, you're about to find out from where. Now, today on the show, this is a very cool and very popular, very, very hot topic that we're covering today. And to help me discuss it, I've brought someone really nifty all the way from Dubai. I'm going to ask you guys to forgive us in case Skype starts being a jerk. I think we're good, but you never know when Skype's going to be a jerk. But Sylvie McCracken is joining me all the way from Dubai today, and she helps passionate entrepreneurs create passive income with ebooks so they can enjoy more freedom in business and life. So after a decade in the entertainment industry, Sylvie started her first business in the nutrition and health industry, and then she passed the 6-figure mark in 18 months using ebooks in her own business. So then she set out to teach other entrepreneurs how to do the same thing with a big focus on efficiency. So Sylvie has been there, done that. She's not teaching people how to write books by selling a book on how to write books. Very different animal. So Sylvie's past and her current clients range from bloggers to medical professionals and everyone in between. She's got a super cool website at sylviemccracken.com, and we're going to dig into it right now. Thanks for joining me, Sylvie.
Thank you for having me, Tina. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's really great to be here. So I want to start out with the beginnings of your entrepreneurial journey. What made you want to start something and make this switch from being in the entertainment industry to starting your own business?
Yeah, I think, hindsight is 20/20. So now I can realize that way before I even did start something, I basically have had that entrepreneurial bug all my life. And of course, it would bite me and I would maybe try and, figure something out. I always kind of felt that I don't want to have a job. I want to be an entrepreneur. I couldn't quite put it perhaps so succinctly in those terms, but it was always I was always trying to escape from the mold. And finally in 2013, I'd had a huge transformation in my own health and I couldn't shut up about it. And of course, so I took to blogging because my family and friends were kind of tired of hearing me, talk about it. And, but the thing is I was working full time to support my family of 5. My husband was a stay-at-home dad and we have 3 kids and, toddlers, teenagers. So I didn't have time for any blogging hobbies. I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I've got to figure out how I can make this a business. Otherwise, then, it's time to go to sleep instead.
Exactly.
So, I just kind of, started digging around, seeing what I could do. And of course, with blogging, the first thing that comes up, I guess, or the first thing that you come across as a monetization strategy is, ads and, affiliates and sponsors and all that jazz. So of course I experimented with all of the above. What you realize very early on is that it takes massive traffic to really make decent money. We're not talking about latte money. We're talking about how am I going to quit my 6-figure day job because I live in Los Angeles and it's just me bringing home the bacon for 5 human beings. So at that point, it was like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. So, of course, I started experimenting with ebooks while still doing all the other stuff. And this was all in my evenings and weekends, of course. And, I very quickly could see, again, we were just kind of comparing, $20 to $10 to $5. But it could, the formula was really kind of started to come together in terms of, all arrows were pointing towards, okay, there's definitely a case for dividing your eggs into a few different baskets, but at least one of these baskets you've got to have some control over. And, you've got to be able to basically have your own products, the easiest of which is ebooks.
And why would you say that ebooks are the easiest of the digital products to create?
Yeah, well, now a few years down the road, I can say that even more legitimately because I've tried I've tried courses and that kind of thing as well. And with an ebook, really, all you absolutely need, if we're talking bare minimum, is a blank Word document. And if you can write an email, you can write an ebook. You can, hire an editor and all that stuff if you're not great at this or that. But with a video course or something like that, we're talking fancy camera, we're talking some skills, we're talking microphone, editing, lighting, makeup, hair, the whole shebang. So compared to that, it's a lot easier to create, number one, and then, of course, to sell as well, because if you're talking about a $20, $25 product compared to, some coaches perhaps are selling $10,000 packages, it's quite a bit easier to sell a $25 product, of course.
It's definitely a shorter sales curve. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's there's no funnel involved. There's no, none of that. You don't need to do a webinar to sell an ebook. That's for sure.
You just were able to kind of put it out there. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. So then, and you built your business to the point then where when did you decide, okay, I'm stable, I feel good enough about this that I'm doing, or what were some of your decision-making points that made you say, okay, I'm good to leave my job and do this full time?
Yeah, well, that was scary because, at the time I still, it was sort of like it was up and down. It's the classic entrepreneurial roller coaster where one day you're like, this is great. We're going to, this is how this year is going to go, or this is how this quarter is going to go. And then the next day you're like, this isn't working. I'm going to be an employee forever. And, so I did that probably 25 times.
I'd say
but,
that's average.
at a certain Yeah, exactly. I did that 25 times in a week. No, I mean, it's just kind of, it's never necessarily like, oh, this is crystal clear. We can project X, Y, Z. I mean, at a certain point, you have to decide, okay, I'm burning, the candle at both ends. I'm working a full-time day job. I'm working evenings and weekends. At some point, you've got to make that jump, or you've got to scale it back and work at a more reasonable pace, and just know, it might take a little bit longer. The truth is, I had no idea when I started. I thought it would take quite a bit longer. I was sort of pacing myself for a marathon, and it ended up being a lot quicker than I thought. So I quit my job at the year mark. I hadn't replaced my income at that point. But that allowed me so much more freedom. And of course, I already had a team at the time because that's one of the things I did. I don't know. I joke that I did it week one and wasn't quite that soon, but I outsourced really early on in my business. And so by the time I quit my job, I mean, all of a sudden my time was so much more freed up. And that's where we really got some traction in those 6 months after I quit my job. It was, it was pretty epic. And the cool thing at that point is that, I mean, I was moving during that time. I didn't, it was a bit of a transition. So I didn't just quit my job and then sit down to work full time in my business. I was pretty exhausted from, a year of just kind of burning the candle at both ends. So even so, the progress happened quickly. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of transition in there, isn't there? Because you were starting a business. And then your husband re-entered the workforce at some point, yes? And you moved to Dubai
so we had made
from LA.
Right. So we had made that decision I want to say almost a year before it happened, actually. But we made that decision many months before because I had no plans of my business being able to support us anytime soon. I mean, and shame on me. If I could go back and tell the old me, have some bigger goals, girl, because I thought it would take a lot longer. And so what happened is by the time, I remember it was 2 months before I gave notice to my day job, it was becoming really clear that it was like, oh, wait a second. We might not need to have my husband enter the workforce because the idea was for him to just kind of, basically bring in some income basically so that it wouldn't be all on my new business and have all that stress on my back. But at that point we had to make that decision of should I not give notice, stay a little bit longer and just go straight into being full-time entrepreneur, or should we stick with our original plan and give ourselves this buffer? So we went with the original plan, and the interesting thing that happened then is that of course I had a lot more flexibility since I was no longer the only breadwinner. I had a lot more flexibility to start my second business basically, which is a risk I would have never taken if I had gone straight into entrepreneurship. So literally you and I would not be speaking right now. We wouldn't have met if I had, gone straight from full-time employee to full-time entrepreneur, because I would have been, too scared to kind of deviate from what I was doing. Cause, when it's all on you, obviously you kind of minimize the risk a little bit. So now I'm experimenting with a whole different business and a whole different niche and courses and all kinds of other things. So.
Yeah. And you really bring up a spectacular point here that I want to kind of tease out a little bit for our listeners, because, we can't get away from the way we're designed as human beings. And, having those needs met for basic needs, for safety in particular, changes the way that we do business. So, as Elizabeth Gilbert said in her recent book that I'm really enjoying, Big Magic, there's no shame in having a day job.
Loved
there's
it.
also no shame in, creating additional support. So, obviously you were really using, your creativity and a lot of teamwork to bring this all
Yeah.
together so that you could take bigger risks in what
Yeah.
you were doing. Now, before you made this transition into teaching people how to create ebooks, which we're going to dig into in just a second, as you were publishing your own books, you said that you had a team very early on. Who were the most kind of crucial people on your team to get those books to, generating income for you?
Yeah. So, well, the thing is, if you have a limited amount of time in a day or in a week, which we all do to some extent, but especially if you've got a full-time day job like I had, I mean, you can't be doing everything. I mean, the progress you're going to make is going to be very slow. So, of course, the reason I kind of hit some strides pretty early on was because I had tasks off my plate. So the first person I hired was an assistant, just a general virtual assistant that was taking things off my plate, like formatting recipe blog posts. At the time, I was doing a lot of recipes on my health and nutrition site. So basically, I would just I would throw the ingredients and the steps. I would just toss them up there, and she knew I had created kind of a system on how I wanted it done. She would design the image. She would put them, number them, bullet them, this and that and the other, and it just made the process so much quicker. So we just had a little bit of an assembly line with each of our systems where where I didn't have to do everything. I had to do just the key things that required me, and everything else could happen with someone else. So, social media manager. Eventually, we added someone that was a little bit more skilled with image design. So at first, my one assistant was doing pretty much everything. And then we started branching out. So now I have several people. Now we've complicated life with things like Entreport and funnels and Zippy courses. And so, of course, oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm sure you know what that's all about.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Of course, we've had to hire we've branched out and hired different people along the way. But getting that first virtual assistant, just one person at least that you can kind of, just hand off things off your plate that don't absolutely require you is just life-changing. Because the minute you start, which is the hardest part, it becomes addicting. It's kind of like cleaning out a closet, and you're like, where did this stuff come from? And then once you've started, you're like, oh my God, there's more.
Yeah, that's
so you look
true.
at your to-do list and you just keep handing it off. And then you're like, oh, well, look, the internet didn't explode. Let me see what else I can give her. Because in the beginning, of course, we're all a little bit of a control freak. And the minute you can, prove to yourself that nothing will go wrong if you just get some stuff off your plate, you're just going to keep at it, which is great.
Yeah, and I also see that, because you did have a bit of, a buffer when you got started, and you weren't relying on your creativity to provide your income, as it were, in the beginning, that you actually had the time to train a VA. It does take time for people to get used to your learning style and the specifics, or even to develop God forbid, our management style. I have a management style. Yeah. Yes, it's called the scream and point method. No, not good. That's not a good method. So we have to develop communication skills that match the people we want to be with. Now, I'm speaking to our audience, of course. I know you have this down pat. So then this transition that you made into then teaching people what you have been successful at and creating passive income with ebooks. What made you want to make that switch?
Well, what was funny is that, I think, it's sort of funny and serendipitous how everything happened. I'm just, I'm kind of like paying attention and writing notes for myself for an eventual memoir someday, because it's just so crazy how all these little things that you think are just, okay, well, let's make this decision. And then you realize this is totally meant to be. But I think one of the things is, I guess business is even more of a passion, if that's possible, for me than nutrition and health, which is not surprising since, my degree is in business. But I kept having colleagues and people that had mentored me in the early days in nutrition and health come to me for advice because, of course, I had kind of made progress so quickly, and they had been at it for 10 years. And of course, they were making good money at that point, but it had taken them 10 years, and they saw me do it in a year and a half. And so I kept getting asked for advice. And I was like, you know what? I've got to do this. I've got to, I just can't see people suffer, I guess. That sounds more dramatic than it needs to be. We're not saving the world here. We're just, sharing our passion with the world. But I just, I started one-on-one helping people, and then I realized, I wanted to do it kind of in more of a group setting. And so that's where it all began. And I thought, let me just try it and see what happens. As everything, right?
Yeah, that's pretty well. Let's just do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not very scientific. Yeah. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong.
Yeah, well, and sometimes we get it kind of right, and then we keep refining it until,
Exactly.
we get it
Most
going.
commonly, I think.
Yes, I
That's
think
probably
definitely
the most common one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the trick is, and one of the reasons I would say, if I were to put my coaching hat on real quick, why you did become successful in that 18 months was not only were you picking great topics that you were both knowledgeable and passionate about, but also that you were willing to keep at it and really refine it and dig down into it and say, okay, well, what's working, what's not working. And, we call that failing faster. Where you make tweaks as you go to, you've got a core that has so much value to it. You just keep going, keep making shifts until you get that, like you said, that formula that you can, to a certain extent, rinse and repeat, that you can then settle into and really make rich and diverse and wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, definitely my first ebook was not, a home run, but it was the best lesson, the best course I could have ever taken was creating that ebook because, that's where I learned most of my lessons.
If you were to think about yourself creating that ebook at that time and your future self was kind of going back and giving yourself a point or two advice, is there anything that comes to mind that you would, one or two things that you would say, boy, hey, Sylvie, circa whatever it was year, you might want to know these one or two things?
That's a good one. I mean, it's hard to kind of, it just, I feel like I could top to bottom, I could tell you a million things I'm trying to pick two. I think the topic could have been better. It wasn't way off, but it could have been better, more refined. So I've gotten better at the topic picking, which is crucial. And then I think, it took me quite a while in the beginning to really just get over that mindset hurdle of like, who am I to write a book? And I wish I could have just smacked myself and said, just get over it quickly, because the sooner you start, the sooner this is going to work. And, anyone can write a book. Let's just cut to the chase on that, but we all get those little mindset hurdles of like, oh no, this is scary. So those are probably the two biggies, because once you get those two right, you almost can't screw up the rest.
That's really important. And I'm so glad you brought up topic. And I'm really interested that you say that anyone can write a book. And I think that's actually a real interesting point of controversy. And what makes you say that anyone can write a book? Because I got to tell you, I've read some really lousy ebooks. So how do you make it? How do people need to do to make it good?
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, I'm talking about in the nonfiction, genre here, but I think basically if you have a passion that you want to share with the world and you can verify that other people are, this is not just you and your passion, but other people want and need and would love to, purchase an ebook on this topic, I think that's critical, because if it's just your passion, if you want to write about knitting needles and nobody cares, then that's not really going to sell. So that's for starters. But as far as anybody writing an ebook, and I've had a few clients that have English as a second language, and in my opinion, their English is great, but it's an 80%, right? They're not 100% fluent in English. And I'm like, look, you can still write the ebook. You just need to hire an editor. I mean,
Exactly.
it just depends on how. So, it might be, one person might be absolutely amazing at writing. Cool. You can do it yourself, from start to finish if you want. Another person might be great at, sharing, they might need more help in the editing department, or they might need to hire a writer to come in and clean it up to give it a little more structure or a little more flow or a little more, what did you mean in this sentence? Because it doesn't really make sense, that kind of thing. Which in my opinion, even if you are a good writer, you should hire that help as well. Because it's easy when you're in it, to miss quite a few things. So
yeah, it's very true.
It's my opinion that anyone can write an ebook. And we're all kind of writers to a degree. We write often. Of course, one could argue that teenagers these days, I have one. It's kind of taking a turn, but I like to tease
it.
It is
still absolutely we can crucial. Yeah. And I love this problem-solving approach that you have to this. That, okay, well, here's your strong point, here's your not so strong point. Let's fill in the gaps around the points where you're not strong, so this can just get done rather than struggling with it. Let's get it done.
Absolutely. And that speed is crucial. I had a client one time who was sitting on a completely finished ebook, and I was like, well, how's it selling? And she's like, oh, it's not up for sale. And then we finally got down to the nitty gritty, and it was like, oh, well, I'm not really sure how to do the tech part of putting it up for sale. And I was like, are you still using that coder so-and-so? Yes. Okay, it'll take you 5 minutes and $100 to email her. The end. Like, it ends up being a mindset issue, I think, at that point. But the truth is we don't have to do every single step of the way from beginning to end. Outsourcing, I think, is key to getting the process done quickly if you're impatient like me. If not, if you want to do it all yourself and bootstrap it, that's fine, but then a little more time.
Yes, exactly. Bootstrapping does require, I would say, a significant amount of more time. Yeah. And that's fine. If it has to be the way that you want to do it. We're all here about living a life and business by our own design.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be a combo of both. You don't have to pick a team. You can just say, okay, let me do this part myself. Let me outsource that. Let me start selling the ebook. And as soon as sales come in, maybe I'll hire out to change the cover and make it a little more pro. I mean, you can definitely mix and match.
Yeah, I like that about your course too, because you talk about that in your course, and I think you really are bringing a lot to the table, and sharing that kind of problem-solving orientation with people, as well as all the steps and all the details you can go through, and then it's really up to people if they want to do it themselves or if they want to outsource it. Knowledge is power. So let's talk a little bit about your e-course that you released this last year, right?
Yeah, I did. I released it last year, and
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
That's a big deal.
And it is a big deal. I mean, talk about, since I was new to making a video course, I reshot it twice, by the way. And the first one never saw the light of day because by the time I saw it when I was finished, I was like, no, we're not doing that. So, I mean, luckily I had business number one funding it because, of course, that was, I was just dumping a whole bunch of money in it before I had even sold it. So, but yeah, it's been a learning process and it's been absolutely great. It's called Create Passive Income with eBooks. And basically I like to call it, I like to say that it's kind of like that quote, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe.
Oh, I love that.
And I feel, I really feel like that's kind of the approach we take in my course. And I've noticed that, and the reason I bring it up is because I've had sort of students that were interested in the course that I said, I don't think this is the right fit. And partly it's because what I noticed is there's a huge interest in like, okay, well, tell me your secrets to selling the ebook, right? And so, of course, module 5 and 6 are all about selling. But the thing is, like, with people that have kind of winged it on the ebook creating front, and if the topic isn't that great, and the writing isn't that great, and the design isn't that great, and this and that, I mean, the truth is you can't make miracles when you get to the selling part, So my approach with it, because it's called Create Passive Income with ebooks for a reason, and so I love to spend the time up front creating an amazing product that practically sells itself, so that the selling part, not that we have to do absolutely nothing, but it's a lot easier, and so in total you're going to spend, much less time on that product overall than you would if you were just kind of winging it on the ebook and then getting on the selling hamster wheel, which you can never get off of because you're constantly going to have to try and sell it.
I run into a lot of writers and authors and speakers who have this very issue. This very issue. They spend all their time trying to sell their book when their book is actually supposed to be selling them.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I guess we'll see where it's headed in the future. I hope it doesn't just, I hope ebooks in general or books in general don't start getting a bad rap because of that, because I have seen a little bit of a trend of that as well. And the thing is, you can fool someone once. You can sell, someone an ebook once, but if they know your product is terrible, guess what? They're not going to buy the second one. Right. So I wouldn't recommend it because this is your name, this is your brand. And ultimately, the ebooks I help my clients and students create are ebooks that, people think, oh, they hear ebook and they're like, oh, you mean like a $2 Kindle book? No, I mean like a book that you're going to put in your bio, like, I am the author of this book. You're going to showcase it loud and proud on your website. You're proud of this product. The only, it's it's just in an ebook format, but we do beautifully designed, full color PDFs. Like, we're not playing small over here.
Exactly.
These are serious ebooks,
Exactly. And I don't even think necessarily that a lot of the issue, especially, in the folks in my sphere who are really brilliant, it's not the content that's the issue. I think it points back to something you said earlier. They didn't spend enough time sharpening the axe in doing the work that was really going to help them create a product that was going to be an instant, aha, yes, I need that for their target market. And it really does, and we're not talking about sensationalism here. We're talking about, really speaking to that audience in a way that they can hear it. And I love that you really spend the time on that. I think that's so important.
Yeah. I think it is. And of course, there's always tweaks that can be made. So some of my students have come and, they're totally taking the approach of, taking it step by step with all the modules that I have for them for their ebooks from now on, but they still have ebooks that they've already created and they want to make a few tweaks to see if it can sell a little bit better. And of course, after the fact, you can still change the cover, the title, and the sales page. Those tweaks can be made, but what can't be saved really is a, bad topic.
Exactly. And I'm excited because you're going to be digging into this a bit more when we talk on the Backstage Pass here on, things people need to look at. First of all, should they be writing a book? And also what topics, how to find good topics. So I'm really excited about talking about that with you on the Backstage Pass. That's going to be really fun.
Let's do it.
Yeah, totally. Well, 2 quick questions before we wrap up today and then have people join us on the Backstage Pass. One is, if people are looking at themselves and saying, should I go ahead and go deeper? Should I spend time looking at creating ebooks? Who are some of the people you say, no brainer, you need to be looking at this?
Yeah, usually my clients and students that kind of this works with best fall into 2 different camps. On the one hand, I've got bloggers that kind of are used to doing this. They're on the blog hamster wheel. They're cranking out a lot of content. They're trying to, see if Google will throw some love their way. They're doing affiliate income, maybe ads, that kind of thing. And then on the other side, there is coaches and people like, I have doctors, people that work one-on-one with people. So on the blogger side of things, look, I really think that, you can still run all the ads you want, do affiliates, do sponsors, do whatever you want, but you need something, at least one thing that you're making money from that is yours, absolutely yours, which means it doesn't matter if Amazon changes their terms of service. It doesn't matter if Google ads are doing well or not well. You have one thing that's yours. And it's about getting off that hamster wheel of, the blog hamster wheel where it's like, well, what are you going to do? Blog every day until you die? It's just not reasonable. So that's on the one hand. And then on the people that work one-on-one, which, I'm not telling anyone to quit doing what they're doing, but at the very least consider adding this, carving out a little time to create this product so that a few months from now, depending on how much time you're able to carve out and all of that, you're able to have something that doesn't require your one-on-one time because your clients or your patients are, amazing and, you love serving them and that is absolutely great. But first of all, not everybody can afford to work with you one-on-one. And, they're coming to your site, learning about you and going away because you're either not in their area or they just can't afford it. And number 2, if you're sick or your client cancels or you're on vacation or something happens to you, God forbid, no money's coming in. So I think you really need to have, passive income is like insurance for entrepreneurs. And so the only thing we can really debate is what percentage of your income stream do you want to be passive? Do you want it to be 20%, of your income so that you can, it's kind of like, okay, you still need to work. You can't, quit your job and go to the Bahamas, but at least you have that little buffer of a rainy day fund that it's okay. If you have a sick day, if your client workload decreases, it's all going to be fine. Or, my preference is 80% passive income, which is what my health and nutrition field is. And, your assistant can handle customer service. And that way, you can kind of work when you want, as you want, that kind of thing. Like right now, that's what gave me the luxury to start a second business is that I had a business that could fund this because, when I started this business, I was making no money. So
perfect. Very leveraged business plan. Super, super awesome.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah. I think we, you just have to figure out what that sweet spot is for you and, you can finagle it along the way as well.
I love the word finagle. I'm so glad you used that.
Yeah, it's a good one, right?
Tell me one last thing.
It's like this isn't a bank with a business plan. You can figure it out.
Exactly.
In progress.
Exactly. It is a creative process, but let it be, flexible. Absolutely. All right. Well, last question just before we wrap up, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Sure.
Sylvie, what is the legacy when you leave the planet that you'd like to leave?
Oh my goodness, that's a tough
Nothing
one.
like ending with a big one, huh? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Eek, that's a big one. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think, I have 2 daughters and a son, and I often kind of, I reflect when I have a minute. I sort of reflect at all of these mindset things that I've had to overcome in order to do something like this, in order to say, well, are you insane leaving a 6-figure day job to go pursue something that you're passionate about? Like, have you lost your marbles entirely? Also, the fact that I'm a woman, I'm a mother, I'm supposed to be spending every waking moment with my children. I think I just kind of want to, shed some light on all of that and say, maybe it's not quite like that. Maybe, we can sort of have it all in terms of, maybe we can make an impact, at the same time make great money, at the same time decide how we want to work and how much we want to work, and spend time with our family as we'd like. I think that's sort of what I'm rooting for, especially for my daughters, my oldest of which is 17. So it's not that long before she's in this position where she's trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life and that kind of thing. So that's what's on my mind.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much for being an example, not just for your children, but for all of us in really representing, someone who has gone out there, bootstrapped it, made it happen, and now is on the path to helping other people make it happen too. So thank you for paying it forward. And that legacy, I think, is already well on its way. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you.
All right, Sylvie.
Thanks so much, Tina.
Well, join me and Sylvie on the Backstage Pass, where we'll be digging into more about creating passive income with ebooks. And of course, you definitely want to go to sylviemccracken.com/ebooks, where you can get her 6 easy steps to create passive income with ebooks. You can find that link along with everything else we talked about today at thestartsomethingshow.com in the show notes for this absolutely delightful episode. We'll see you next time on the Start Something Show.
Start something with purpose. Start something with freedom. Start something now. Go to thestartsomethingshow.com, join our community of superstarters, and get your perfect day planner pack, a free resource to help you create the life you've dreamed of living. Take action now, and we'll see you for our next exciting episode.